beautiful sunrise over the Eastern Cape this morning as we come to you live from Pretoria at the IEC Centre, but the whole country is watching exactly what is going down around the voting process that has ended, and now it's the counting process that's taking place. And I must say that this is a beautiful, beautiful sunrise out of Port Elizabeth, and we thank so much to the team there for sending us that shot through. But here we are, back to reality, because there's lots of work to be done today, as you can just imagine. All of the IEC officials are hard at work. The political parties are sitting on the floor. They are watching that board like it was the last thing on earth, I can tell you that much, because every time a vote goes up, they get excited. A little bit earlier, we heard the Western Cape was in a fair enough lead for the DA, that they looked like they were going to take the province again, and we heard a big clap there from the DA's desk. But again, remember, this is the early days. Let's put up an interesting graph for you on the screen, just so that you can get a little bit of a perspective as to what's happening in these elections, what happened in past elections. My analysts with me, I've got Professor Booysen, and I've also got Somadoda Fikeni, who's here to talk to us. At the point, remember, please do remember that this is only 12.53% of the voting districts counted, and we're able to draw a comparison as to what is going on so far. Just in terms of this, both of you were actually saying, you can't really look at these because it all depends on which voting districts have been declared at this point.
Yes, absolutely, and that's quite arbitrary, not directly comparable. Can be a completely different set of voting stations from very different area that we see reflected there, and just happen to have finished counting last election this time.
Yeah.
We know at the moment Gauteng is a province that's sitting on the lowest number of voting districts declared. There are vast areas, also informal settlement areas, that still have to come in. So that is where we get it gets important to look at the modelling and projections as probably more accurate a reflection than what we see the counts at this stage.
Susanna, I want to break into the different provinces in a short while, but I want to bring Somadoda into the conversation as well. We've been talking predictions, CSIR predictions. We've just really been sort of analysing exactly how these parties are doing. The top three, ANC, DA, EFF. What are you making so far? I haven't asked you that yet.
Well, I think it's exactly what we expected to happen, that ANC nationally would lead and the DA would come a distant second, but showing a very strong improvement from its previous performance.
Yeah. And
EFF would take the third place, replacing COPE, whose fortune seemed to have just taken a nosedive. And then the next ones to watch is the toss between the IFP and the NFP, because those ones have had to compete. They gain most of their votes in KZN, but NFP has tried to penetrate the other provinces as well.
Okay.
Then UDM, not too far away, and the Freedom Front Plus. The Freedom Front Plus, we expect that the areas where it has support will be quickly calculated, so by midday you'll know exactly where it sits. The informal settlements and many other places will start coming later, so you expect that the other parties like EFF, UDM and other smaller parties will start picking up late in the day.
All right. Okay, so to fill you in, some of the CSIR predictions that we said for the national was 63.4%, the DA 22%, and the EFF 4.4%. So that's the national picture. That's what we've been given, and it's quite interesting. But we want to break down into the provinces now. Professor, you've got the information for us. Should we start off with, let's start off with some of the parties. Well, look what we got on screen. That's how it stands now. Let's see your predictions. Let's begin with the Eastern Cape. What is the predictions telling us for the final result in the Eastern Cape?
Eastern Cape seems to point towards the ANC, moderately up on what it had the last time, on 73% now. DA coming in at 16%, UDM 5% in the Eastern Cape, EFF 3%, COPE 1%, and so it goes down.
So it goes down.
smaller, even smaller than that. So the ANC is sitting there on a very strong 73% support compared with the 68% it had in the last election.
Yeah,
and that actually Eastern Cape is, interestingly, is a province in which the ANC shows the biggest amount, percentage point growth.
Yeah.
And it's also up in 3 other provinces, down in others, which gives the overall results, national level down.
Yeah.
But the ANC is also up slightly up in KwaZulu-Natal, in the Northern Cape and in the Western Cape. Interesting, Northern Cape, one of the provinces where the DA had anticipated maybe they could even form an alliance there. Yeah. But if I may look at the Northern Cape result, there the ANC in terms of the CSR projections comes in on 65%, pretty close to 2/3 of a majority there, and the DA on 23%.
For a much bigger turnout there.
DA was even talking about a possible alliance with COPE. COPE comes in as about the 4th biggest party. After the EFF, 3rd place there, COPE only on 4.1% in the Northern Cape. So it was a big dream that the DA once upon a time had, that he could maybe constitute some alliance majority in that province.
Okay, let's pause there. We've looked at the Eastern Cape, we've looked at the Northern Cape there. Dr. Fikeni, your analysis?
Actually, what I wanted to say is that you remember that in the Eastern Cape, ANC always was riddled by factionalism.
Yeah.
But in its last conference, there seemed to be some quietness and some stability. And where it had failures in terms of performance and service delivery, national government has come in to put in as many national programs on the ground as possible. And the leaders visited the province quite frequently, and you can see the benefit of that.
Yes.
And the implosion of COPE is yet another factor, because in the last election, COPE had eaten quite a huge chunk, from the Eastern Cape.
Yeah.
So those factors taken together put the ANC in a stronger position.
So does it look like that the COPE voter went back to the ANC, or did they defect to the EFF? What do you think?
Most of them actually returned back to the ANC, and even in the last week or so, some of the prominent leaders returned back to the ANC.
Yeah.
And some simply stay away when they realize that, you do not have a political home. Some have gone to UDM, some have gone to EFF.
Okay, interesting.
Because we know the COPE vote originally, that 7 percentage points, was constituted by 4 percentage points of the 7 from and 3% from the DA. That is how, and that I also know from work we did with the CSIR the last time around, dissecting that 7% that COPE had, see what was the original basis that those had migrated to. And yes, so it seems like we see that again, splitting up, many going back to the ANC, other portions going other places, including back to the DA, and those people have jumped ships already.
Wow, all right. Okay, so that was the Eastern Cape and the Northern Cape. Very strong territories for the ANC. What else have we got some predictions on? Let's have a look at Gauteng. That I want to talk about. Let's go.
Very interesting one. The projections say 56% for the ANC. Okay. So nowhere near being pushed down below the 50%.
Yeah.
As many of the opposition parties had claimed it would be, and some of the earlier polls that had not been so sophisticated in their analyses had said maybe down below 50%. And DA is sitting on 28%. So I'm sure they will be very disappointed with that performance there. They had said 2 weeks ago that they were polling at the late 20% into the 30%. They could push it up and get some alliance there if they had not polling even higher than that. EFF comes in on 9.2%. Yeah. It's one of the EFF's strongest provinces there.
Yeah. Dr. Fikeni, Gauteng has been possibly one of the most rigorous campaigning points throughout these elections, between the EFF, who actually thought they were going to win it outright. They were bold enough to say that. The DA also coming in with its premier candidate Mmusi Maimane, really gunning for this province, saying that ANC are going to get below 50, we are going to come in, but the ANC are still got that stronghold over
several factors at play there.
Yeah, talk to us.
The first one is that this is the most diverse province, and as such, when you are launching your party, your rallies and the interest is such that you'll see the numbers coming. And the second one is that the original problems that were there between the national ANC leadership and the provincial leadership seem to have been sorted out over time. That they started having a joint campaign and they realized that this is the economic hub of the country, which they cannot afford to lose.
Yes.
That's when they started pouring in resources and also fighting back. ANC has an advantage in all these elections. It has the resources. Therefore, it can come back in the last minute and simply flood the place.
Yeah.
So that in itself, I think, is another very important factor in this particular case.
Yeah.
And the last one is that the leadership of Gauteng found itself being able to distance itself from some of the accusations of national leader like Jacob Zuma and say we've been critical on the ground of some of the excesses that we've seen. So they can stand out and say all these other sins that the president or other leaders are accused of, we are not part of it. Even when Nomvula Mongonyana did make that comment about Begestan, they quickly forced her to retract that, but also it was known that the leadership of Gauteng had not endorsed that particular position. So those are some of the dynamics that you'll see.
Well, yeah, it is interesting. And we're just seeing, I think, that the EFF is really coming out as a threat to the DA as being that massive opposition party. And that's, I think, what the picture is being unveiled here. Let's have a look at this graphic that we've got there. And you can see for Gauteng how it's changed, that landscape has changed over the years.
Mm-hmm. And when we look at Gauteng, that the projections, we should just also bear in mind that it's still a relatively small proportion of the voting districts declared there. Only around 10% are declared at this time, whereas in a province like Western Cape, close to half of the voting districts are declared. And Gauteng, I know the EFF actually expects to do better than the current 9%, and they're saying that many of their results are not in. We know informal settlement results are really not in. Although this year's are a bit of circumspection, but quite certain that even Gauteng may be approximately on track in those projections.
Yeah.
That is the one province that has the biggest chance in the projections to change.
Okay, so we could see a bit of a change there in the Gauteng. Remember, what we're talking about right now are the CSIR projections. We're also showing you the actual votes according to our system. But right now we're doing predictions and projections and just talking about the fact that this is the way that the result could go. I think we can do one more province. I know that we're going to be crossing shortly to a couple of the provinces. Shall we take a look at Limpopo, for instance, because that, I think, is one that we've also been watching quite closely. Let's look at the projection, and then Dr. Fikeni will get some response from you as well.
Projection, ANC doing well in there, although by about 6 percentage points down on the previous election result, and that would be a big fall if that is the case. So they're currently coming in on 78% of the vote, which is high, but down, and that would be quite devastating for the ANC. And the EFF seems to have moved into that space, taking around 10% of the vote in that province.
Yeah.
Interestingly, too, that 10% would makes the EFF the biggest opposition party in that province, which and that means there it would take the place of the DA. But in the DA is generally doing well in terms of becoming biggest opposition party in more of the legislatures than they had been before.
So they would
growing
also opposition
be
party.
Seeing that as consolidating their position as the biggest opposition party, whereas EFF really needed that, and it's possibly much lower there than what they had expected, because that is Julius Malema's province, the province that has a lot of governance issues, and that would have given scope for much more opposition party growth, but it could be exactly those kind of problems that explain the DA's 6% apparent drop in support in that province, and that is a big drop. And Limpopo sits on registered voters of about 2.5 million, midway in a pile of registration numbers of the provinces, and so I would see that is quite a bit of a setback to the ANC.
Dr. Fikeni, these tallies that we've gotten, and we're seeing the votes coming in quite fast and furiously, and I want to talk about the ANC and the EFF. Is the vote for the EFF a vote for the confidence in that party, or is it a vote against the ANC?
It's a combination of both. There is an element of people like the youth leaguers who were disbanded, the leadership in Limpopo which was disbanded. All those, when they are disgruntled, they would gravitate towards the EFF. At the same time, that EFF has brought in a radical proposition in terms of policy, no matter how crude, no matter how improbable some of the issues they are presenting. To people who are disenchanted with the system generally, who feel disaffected, who feel outside, left out, they see those policy proposals as hitting the core. They may not know how those will be realized. The issue of land, the issue of wealth redistribution and so forth is what has always come up from the liberation parties. But here is the case where a party seemed to profile them, push them forward, in line with Julius Malema and the Youth League leaders who, while still within the Youth League, managed to force the ANC, COSATU, SACP to deal with the issue of nationalization, no matter how they handle it. So it's a combination of both people who simply are disgruntled with the ANC and those who see the policy proposition as giving some hope.
All right. Well, there you go. That's the analysis of the EFF, the voter of the EFF. And I remember talking in 2009 and saying that if COPE kept up the strength that they did in those elections, these elections would be an amazing one to watch for them. But unfortunately, they didn't keep up that strength. So we'll say that again. If EFF keep up the strength that they have got in these elections, you can only imagine in the next election that figure is going to get higher. Let's take a very quick break here on the program. I know we're getting into this discussion, but we've got to pay the bills and we also have to go to our regions. So stay with us. We'll be back after this.